Mormon Geography. Where did the Book of Mormon take place? An island theory. Over the years as a Mormon, I've been intrigued, like many others, by the various theories about where in the world the people of the Book of Mormon lived, and who their descendants are today. The implications of Book of Mormon geography range from mild curiosity on the one hand, to attacks on the veracity of the Book of Mormon on the other hand. For me personally, it also seems important to know where the Book of Mormon took place so that I can both understand where the New Jerusalem will be built and recognize who the descendants of Lehi are today. And so I'm curious, which of all the theories is true? Or are none of them true? And is the truth still yet to be found? The original theory on where the Book of Mormon took place started with the first leaders of the early LDS Church, who taught that Lehi landed on the west coast of South America, and that his posterity spread north to the narrow neck of land in Central America, and finally spread all the way up through North America. Those leaders taught that Lehi's descendants are the primary ancestors of the Native American peoples in North and South America today. To me, this is the least believable theory on its face, simply because of the vast geography it claims to cover and enormous ancient populations it claims to have started, both of which don't seem plausible according to what is written in the book. At the same time, it could be the most compelling theory to true believers because it was taught by Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, and almost all the early prophets and leaders of the church. A big shift regarding the Book of Mormon geography occurred when the church started to teach that it took place mostly in an area of Central America. This theory provided for the narrow neck of land commonly referred to in the Book of Mormon, as well as recognizing the limitations of the geography and population capacity of the Book of Mormon itself. Central America also contains many old ruins, temples, undiscovered archaeology, etc. However, for me, the scale of land and population is still too large. There are problems with the DNA and archaeological timing, and there are also important geographical features missing from this area that are written about in the Book of Mormon. The Central American theory also doesn't seem to fit with the prophesied coming of the Gentiles, who completely scatter the remnants of Lehi and possess the land. I was fascinated several years ago when I learned about the Heartland or Hopewell theory of Book of Mormon geography. This theory was compelling on several levels. It seemed to work well with some of Joseph Smith's incidental prophecies and comments on the Native Americans. It explained why the golden plates ended up in New York. It coincided perfectly with the prophecies of the Gentiles who would scatter the inhabitants and possess the land. It lined up with the New Jerusalem being built in Jackson County, Missouri, as well as Nauvoo and Kirkland being placed in areas of Book of Mormon significance. But once again, the vast scale of the geography of the Heartland model, the lack of important features such as the River Sidon and the Four Seas, no DNA correlation, missing archaeological evidence, and no plausible explanation for how Lehi could have landed on the west side of the Midwestern states, all shed serious doubt on this model. Since then, some have suggested it could have taken place in the area around New York and Vermont, or even on the Baja California Peninsula in Mexico, or in a Florida connected to the Yucatan Peninsula on what is now sunken land. But to me, there continue to be major flaws in each of these ideas. And so I've wondered a great deal about this question. I have respect and appreciation for each of these theories and the people who believe in them. I can see where they're coming from, and that each theory has some definite merits. But they just don't feel right to me. My mind and my heart can't agree on any of them. So, as I was recently reading in 2 Nephi, chapter 10, where Nephi's brother Jacob is speaking, these words jumped off the page to me. 2 Nephi 10, verse 20. We have been driven out of the land of our inheritance, but we have been led to a better land, for the Lord has made the sea our path, and we are upon an isle of the sea. Wow, an isle of the sea. How interesting. Where has this scripture been all my life? When I saw this in my mind's eye, suddenly so much that hadn't made sense to me started to become clear, and I realized why every other theory didn't make sense. Not one of them is dealing with an isle of the sea. They all have to do with vast continents. The word isle doesn't seem to be used much in our common speech these days, but it was definitely common in English of older times. I find it a lot in historical books I love from England and Scotland, and so the word makes sense to me. The dictionary defines an isle as, quote, an island, especially a small one, unquote. So the Lord led Lehi's family to a small island in the sea. A few weeks ago, I taught a class about Lewis and Clark and their exploration of the wide west of the United States. Thinking of the huge land mass they traversed, I don't see how North America can possibly be described as a small island of the sea. It just doesn't work. Neither can the continent of South America. Central America is not an isle, nor are Florida or Baja California. According to the writers of the Book of Mormon, none of our existing theories or models can possibly work. So I'd like to propose considering what Jacob said and see if the Book of Mormon could have taken place on an island in the sea. What would support the island theory? The first reason I think Jacob was right, that they were on an island in the sea, is that the entire Book of Mormon takes place in a very limited geographical area. Studying over and over the book, I see that from the very first to the very last, it only talks about everything taking place in only a handful of locations. Here's a map that shows roughly the locations of the most prominent places named in the Book of Mormon. First, the seas. The sea east, the sea west, sea north, and sea south. And the two major land masses, the land southward and the land northward. As Helaman says, "And it came to pass that they did multiply and spread, and did go forth from the land southward to the land northward, and did spread insomuch that they began to cover the face of the whole earth, from the sea south to the sea north, from the sea west to the sea east." Second, the land mass of their first inheritance, basically where Lehi's family landed and started to settle. It's described in relation to everything else as being in the far south and on the west side by the seashore. As Alma says, "On the west, in the land of Nephi, in the place of their father's first inheritance, and thus bordering along by the seashore." Next, the land of Nephi. This is the land that Nephi and those who followed him first fled to when they escaped Laman and Lemuel after the death of Lehi. It's described as being south of the land Zarahemla, and it spanned from the East Sea to the West Sea, as Alma describes. South of the land Zarahemla, the land of Nephi did run in a straight course from the East Sea to the west. And then in Alma again, "And it came to pass that the Nephites had inhabited the land bountiful, even from the East Sea to the West Sea. And thus the Nephites in their wisdom, with their guards and their armies, had hemmed in the Lamanites on the south, that thereby they should have no more possession on the north, that they might not overrun the land northward. Therefore the Lamanites could have no more possessions, only in the land of Nephi, and the wilderness round about. Now this was wisdom in the Nephites, as the Lamanites were an enemy to them, that they could not suffer their afflictions on every hand, and also that they might have a country whither they may flee, according to their desires. So they kept them down in the south in the land of Nephi." Okay, next to the north is the land of Zarahemla. This is where the first king Mosiah, who was the father of King Benjamin, fled to when the rest of the wicked Nephites were destroyed. It's described as being north of the land of Nephi, see the previous scripture, but is also always referred to as being lower than the land of Nephi, which I find fascinating, and I take it to mean lower in elevation. It says this in many scriptures. For example, Mosiah 7:2, "Their strong men might go up to the land of Nephi," so that they had to go up from Zarahemla to Nephi. Mosiah 9:3, "I, Zeniff, being overzealous to inherit the land of our fathers, started again on our journey into the wilderness to go up to that land," meaning to the land of Nephi. Mosiah 27, "And they went up to the land of Nephi to destroy the people of Limhi." Mosiah 28:1, "The sons of Mosiah did go up to the land of Nephi," etc. There's a lot of these references in the Book of Mormon. Okay, next to the north is the land bountiful and the narrow neck of land. They're right in the middle of the two land masses described in the Book of Mormon. As Alma says, "And now it was only the distance of a day's and a half's journey for a Nephite on the line bountiful and the land desolation, from the east to the west sea. And thus the land of Nephi and the land of Zarahemla were nearly surrounded by water, there being a small neck of land between the land northward and the land southward." I think that description is such a solid proof of it being an island, that the land of Nephi and Zarahemla, those two areas on the southern landmass, were nearly surrounded by water, according to Alma, except for this small neck of land that connects it to the northern landmass. So this southern area had to either be an island, like Jacob said, or a peninsula. This is one of the strongest evidences for the island theory in the Book of Mormon. And then Ether says, "The Jaredites built a great city by the narrow neck of land, by the place where the sea divides the land." So even in that time period, the whole land was centered around this idea of this central little narrow neck of land. Next up, above the narrow neck, is the land desolation. It is north of the narrow neck of land. This is where the Jaredites were destroyed, and it was also where the people of Zarahemla first landed. As Alma says, the land which the Nephites called Bountiful bordered upon the land which they called Desolation, it being so far northward that it came into the land which had been peopled and been destroyed, of whose bones we have spoken, which was discovered by the people of Zarahemla, it being the place of their first landing. And then we have the land northward, from Desolation to the sea north. Again, Helaman 3:8 says, "And it came to pass that they did multiply and spread, and did go forth from the land southward to the land northward, and did spread insomuch that they began to cover the face of the whole earth, from the sea south to the sea north, the sea west to the sea east." So this suggests that there is an end to the land, because they covered the whole face of the earth, or the whole land that they had access to. There was nothing further north. There was nothing further south. The people at this point, shortly before the destruction of Christ's death, had spread across the entire island from sea to sea to sea to sea. This matches so better the population potential of the numbers of people talked about in the Book of Mormon. The population varied from the tens of thousands to at the very most 2 million people, which would fit a small island much better than one or two vast American continents. So, in looking at the places described in the Book of Mormon, the entire history, from the Jaredites to Moroni, took place in a few defined areas between four seas on two land masses, the north and the south, joined by a narrow neck of land. Another reason I think Jacob was right, and that they were on an island in the sea, is the descriptions of the migration patterns of the people in the Book of Mormon. From the very beginning of the civilization of Lehi's posterity, they could only ever migrate one way, to the north. Because they had started on the very tip of an island, there was nowhere for them to go except north. They couldn't go further west because of the sea west. The sea east kept them in on the east side. The south was water, and so they could just go north. For example, in Alma 6:3, "And it came to pass that in the 37th year of the reign of the judges, there was a large company of men, even to the amount of 5,400 men, their wives and their children departed out of the land of Zarahemla into the land which was northward." Helaman 3, "And it came to pass in the 46th, yea, there was much contention and many dissensions, in the which there was an exceedingly great many who departed out of the land of Zarahemla, and went forth into the land northward, to inherit the land." 3 Nephi 4, "And it came to pass that Zarahemla did give command unto his people that they should withdraw themselves from the siege, and march into the furthermost parts of the land northward." And Mormon 2, "And the Lamanites did give unto us the land northward, yea, even to the narrow passage which led into the land southward, and we did give unto the Lamanites all the land southward." It's interesting to me that there is nowhere in the Book of Mormon where it ever says that they migrated south, east, or west. It's always to the north until they come to the end of the land northward. So, if they were not on an island, I'd expect them to have migrated in every direction. But they couldn't. They were surrounded by the sea on all sides. The last reason I think Jacob was right, and that they were on an island in the sea, is the large number of prophecies in the Book of Mormon specifically to such people who live on islands in the sea. For example, here are several. 2 Nephi 29, "For I, the Lord, commanded all men, both in the east and in the west, and in the north and in the south, and in the islands of the sea, that they shall write the words which I shall speak unto them." And we know he commanded Lehi and his posterity to write his words. So he was talking about them. 1 Nephi 19, "Zenos spake concerning the 3 days of darkness, which should be a sign given of his death unto those who should inhabit the isles of the sea, more especially given unto those who are the house of Israel. And we know this sign was given specifically to the Nephites. They experienced 3 days of darkness." 1 Nephi 19:12, "And all these things must surely come, saith the prophet Zenos, and the rocks of the earth must rend. And because of the groanings of the earth, many of the kings of the isles of the sea shall be wrought upon by the great Spirit of God, to exclaim, the God of nature suffers. And we know the rocks were rent, and the earth groaned for 3 days." This is all written in 3 Nephi. 1 Nephi 22:4, And behold, there are many who are already lost from the knowledge of those who are at Jerusalem. Yea, the more part of all the tribes have been led away, and they are scattered to and fro upon the isles of the sea. And whither they are, none of us knoweth, save that we know that they have been led away. 2 Nephi 21:11. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from the islands of the sea. The Book of Mormon is full of promises to Lehi's seed that a remnant will be recovered. And why not? Like this from the islands of the sea. 1 Nephi 19:16. Yea, then will he remember the isles of the sea. Yea, and all the people who are of the house of Israel will I gather in, saith the Lord, according to the words of the prophet Zenos from the four quarters of the earth. There's his promise to gather in these people. 1 Nephi 21:1. And again, hearken, O ye house of Israel, all ye that are broken off and are driven out because of the wickedness of the pastors of my people. Yea, all ye that are broken off, that are scattered abroad, who are of my people, O house of Israel, listen, O isles, unto me. There's that word again, isles. 2 Nephi 10:8. And it shall come to pass that they shall be gathered in from their long dispersion from the isles of the sea and from the four parts of the earth, and the nations of the Gentiles shall be great in the eyes of me, saith God, in carrying them forth to the lands of their inheritance. And again, Jacob's own words, 2 Nephi 10:20. We have been driven out of the land of our inheritance, but we have been led to a better land, for the Lord has made the sea our path, and we are upon an isle of the sea. But great are the promises of the Lord unto them who are upon the isles of the sea. Wherefore, as it says isles, there must needs be more than this, and they are inhabited also by our brethren. I think each of these prophecies are beautiful. The covenants that the Lord made with these remnants of the house of Israel, whom he scattered upon the isles of the sea, will someday be fulfilled. And I believe the descendants of Lehi are some of the people the Lord was talking about being upon the isles of the sea. So if this theory is true, and the Book of Mormon took place on an isle of the sea, what does that mean for us today? I think it has important implications. If it took place on an unnamed island of the sea, number one, we can't prove or disprove the Book of Mormon based on archaeology, because we don't know exactly where it took place. It could have been in the Americas, it could have been in the South Pacific, it could have been in the Atlantic, it could have been anywhere. Moroni could have built a boat and sailed to America just as easily as Nephi or the Jaredites built boats and sailed. We can't know where it happened, or if the island even exists today in the same form it existed almost 2,000 years ago. Number two, we can't prove or disprove the Book of Mormon based on DNA because we don't know which islands people to test. Number three, we don't know where the New Jerusalem will be built because we don't know where these lands are. And number four, most importantly to me, we don't know who the modern Lamanites are or how to get the Book of Mormon to them. I personally think this will not happen until a prophesied time in the Book of Mormon when the Lord will make bare his holy arm once more before the nations. And I think that he and his disciples will lead that work of taking the Book of Mormon to Lehi's descendants at that time. I just hope I get to see it in my lifetime. In coming to this understanding that I really don't know where on earth the Book of Mormon took place, it helps me realize something very important. It's not so essential for me to know where it took place as it is for me to come to understand what took place in the Book of Mormon, and more importantly, why. Then I can hopefully learn from their stories, their experiences, their prophecies, and most of all, from the visit of Jesus Christ among them. I'd love to know what you think about Book of Mormon geography. Feel free to comment below.